The movie starts with a medieval pyramid. It's a very cold and eerie sight, as there are clouds all around the place. There's a dog running to his owner, Tad, who seems to be investigating something. The dog's name happens to be Jeff, and he follows his owner everywhere. Meanwhile, Tad investigates a symbol carved on the wall, but just then, he hears someone shout. He turns toward the sound and sees his team. Tad tells them about the symbol he has found and asks the team leader to decode it. According to the sign, find the true path in its detours and trust the stranger because he is wise. Everyone is confused after finding out the meaning. They have no idea about it whatsoever. After learning about the meaning, Tad says that he knows what to do and presses the middle part of the symbol. Suddenly, there's a rumbling sound, and the ground below Tad opens like a door. The door is massive, so Tad falls inside it, as does Jeff. That's when they reach a very creepy place. It looks like an abyss. Jeff runs to a skeleton and bites it, causing it to collapse on the ground. He then looks up to see an Egyptian sarcophagus. Suddenly, a bunch of chains come out of nowhere, and the statue flies upwards. The craters around him start collapsing, and a bunch of traps start getting activated just as the craters collapse. The entire place starts to collapse. Tad is about to fall into the lava. He holds on for dear life until his dog jumps to where he is and starts licking his face. Tad thinks he is going to die any moment now, but that's when a girl saves him while hanging on a vine. She grabs his hand tightly and swings the vine to an exit. They go up, and finally they get to the land area again. The girl who saved him is his girlfriend, Sarah. She asks Tad if he's okay, and Tad timidly replies that he's fine. The team leader finds out all about this little accident and shouts at Tad. He even calls Tad completely useless. As a result, he is kicked out of the group because he is too much of a wreck. They ask him to leave with his dog and his parrot, Belzoni. Tad is disheartened to get kicked out but can't do anything about it. He starts packing his stuff and prepares to leave for Chicago. Sarah offers to come along with him, but he refuses. Tad then returns to his apartment and goes to his room. There, he is shocked to see a bunch of stuff scattered all across his room. Suddenly, he hears a tap turning and notices that the bathroom door is slightly open. He goes to check it out, and it seems that there is someone behind the curtain. He opens the curtain with shaky hands and sees a mummy there, who hugs him tightly and says he's back. Tad is shocked to see all the stuff around him and asks the mummy how he got all those, to which the mummy replies that he used Tad's credit card. He goes on to say that he got everything he needed from the internet. Tad immediately takes his credit from the mummy, and just then, he hears the doorbell ring. He opens it, and the mummy ecstatically says it's the jet ski he ordered. Tad is enraged to hear the mummy be so reckless, but he doesn't say anything. The two sit down on the couch, and that's when Tad tells the mummy that he got fired from the team. The mummy is shocked to hear this and starts encouraging Tad by telling him that he's the best architect out there. He even assures Tad by saying that it was he who found him. Tad just smiles and nods at that. On the other hand, Tad's old research team finally finds the Egyptian sarcophagus. They plan on taking it back to Chicago in order to study it properly. Meanwhile, Tad seems to be at an archaeology class, learning all about brushes and chemicals. He's very bored and wants to get out. Finally, he finishes his class and is about to head home when he gets a call from an unknown number. The caller asks him if he sees the car parked right in front of him. Tad replies that he does, and that's when the mysterious caller asks him to get in it. Tad does as he's told and asks the driver where they are going. The driver ignores him and keeps driving. They eventually enter a creepy mansion, where Tad is led through a hall to what seems to be a living room. Suddenly, a woman pops up from behind Tad. She introduces herself as Professor Victoria Moon. Victoria has a TV show called Mystery TV. While talking, Victoria shows Tad a model that looks like a battle in Egypt. It happens to be the great battle of Pharaoh Cheops against his sorcerer, Hermes Trismegistus. Continuing on, she tells Tad that Hermes created an object with the power of the gods. The object could control magic and is known as the Emerald Tablet. All because of its power, the kingdom of Cheops had achieved heights of splendor no one had even seen before. Tired of the pharaoh never acknowledging his merits, Hermes decided to harness the power of the tablet to overthrow him. He went on to create an enchantment that could unleash the beasts of the underworld against Cheops' armies. But soon after, the pharaoh discovered Hermes' plan and hid the tablet so that no one could ever use it again. This legend quickly spread throughout the world, and many tried to find it but failed. There was only one who found it, and that person was Napoleon Bonaparte. But even he couldn't control the tablet due to its immense power. Unfortunately, Napoleon couldn't stop it from falling into the enemy's hands. Due to the ominous threat of the tablet, Napoleon returned the device to its hideout and erased all traces of its whereabouts. But, unbeknownst to Napoleon, his archaeologist, Dominique Vivant-Denon, had uncovered an engraving that led to the tablet. Tad is stunned to hear all this and asks Victoria where she got all this information from. That's when she tells him that she got it from Dominique's personal diary. Victoria goes on to tell him that she knows what Tad found in Mexico and shows him a fragment of the Emerald Tablet. She then says that the fragment had started glowing when he found the Egyptian sarcophagus. With hopes of finding all the other fragments, Victoria asks Tad to persuade his team to work with them so that they can find more clues to the tablet. Tad listens to it all and finally returns to his apartment, only to find a huge mess. He sees the mummy playing a VR game. Eventually, Tad decides to continue his expedition and call Sarah. He apologizes for not picking up her call earlier, but that's when Sarah asks him to turn on the TV. Tad does so and learns that his old team discovered the Egyptian sarcophagus in Mexico and has returned to Chicago. Tad is shocked to learn all this and wants to get his hands on the sarcophagus. While the team gains more and more attention, Sarah tells Tad that they're having a conference soon. In turn, Tad tells her all about Victoria and her request, but Sarah requests that he not trust her as they were friends in high school. She then tells him that Victoria got really weird, which caused them to fall out. Finally, Sarah tells Tad that she has to go and hangs up the phone. Annoyed, Tad exclaims that this is very unfair and decides to show everyone how awesome he actually is. He leaves behind the mummy and plans to go to Chicago. Tad finally manages to get to Chicago and sneaks into the conference room. He looks at the missing piece that had been used to open the sarcophagus. He starts to daydream about finding the missing tablet and everyone cheering for him. Tad attaches the missing piece to the sarcophagus and opens. He gets all excited, but his excitement soon fades as he sees a scrawny-looking creature. It's all locked up and chained to the coffin. Just then, Tad hears a voice talking to him. He is very scared, but then he sees the mummy he kept in his home, which jumps in front of him. Tad is startled and asks the mummy what he's doing there. The mummy simply replies that he was bored at home and decided to tag along. He has also brought Jeff and Belzoni with him. Tad doesn't know what to say and instead focuses on the sarcophagus in front of him. He uses a translator app to read the text carved on the sarcophagus. Tad then tells the mummy not to touch anything, but the mummy doesn't listen. He has already broken the creature out of the coffin. The creature starts glowing and flies out of its coffin. It somehow manages to turn Jeff, Belzoni, and Tad's mummy into a monster. Tad's mummy ends up becoming a crocodile, and the parrot gets the head of the dog. Chaos ensues as Tad's mummy says he can't control his legs and starts running around everywhere, destroying everything in its path and causing a ruckus. He also ends up destroying the sarcophagus. Suddenly, an alarm in the building starts ringing. Police sirens start wailing, due to which Tad and his gang flee the place. Tad starts to think that the curse must have come from the Emerald Tablet and decides to find it. Tad plans to go to Paris to find more clues about the tablet, since that's where Dominique's office is. As they don't have money to travel, the gang tries to sneak in a big box for the flight. Back in the conference building, the police see the sarcophagus and start to investigate. That's when a woman from the agency finds Tad's backpack that he had accidentally left behind. Sarah learns about this and runs out the building to find him, but just then, Victoria parks in front of her and tells her to get in the car. Sarah does so, but they end up having a fight, and Sarah storms out of the vehicle. Before leaving, Victoria angrily tells Sarah to look for Tad by going to Paris. Tad and the mummy reach Paris. They decide to go to the Louvre Museum, and that's where Tad searches for clues regarding Dominique's office. Just then, he finds a secret place under the statue of Anubis. Tad starts to look for something that might help them get through, but the mummy breaks the bottom half of the statue with a fire extinguisher. That's when they see a staircase and go down. Underneath, the mummy opens the sarcophagus, and another mummy jumps out of there. It introduces itself as the queen of the 18th dynasty, Ra-Amina. Dominique, it turns out, had kept Ra-Amina hidden. Because of this, Tad convinces her to help them until they hear the voices of agents telling him to stop. Ra-Amina then shows them a secret tunnel which they use to get out and eventually hop onto her bathtub to slide down it. They then end up falling into a river and avoid numerous ships passing by. Tad and the mummy cause a lot of disasters in Paris but finally manage to get their way out of the river. Just then, the mummy turns into an ammit because of the curse. An ammit is a creature that has the head of a crocodile, body of a leopard, and the backside of a hippo found in the underworld. The mummy quickly transforms into a ferocious huge beast and charges at Tad. But suddenly, Ra-Amina shows him the rubber chicken he brought. The mummy transforms quickly into a ferocious huge beast and charges at Tad, and the monster turns back toward Mummy. Ra-Amina then tells Tad that such curses become permanent if they aren't cured in time. She suggests they get moving on finding the tablet and also makes a deal with Tad. She will find the tablet for him if he helps her get famous. Tad agrees, and then Ra-Amina tells Tad that they need a key to find a map that leads to the Emerald Tablet. On the other hand, Sarah investigates Dominique's office when Victoria pops up from behind her. She presses a button on her table that opens a secret drawer with a drawing of the place that has the Emerald Tablet. She asks Sarah to call her team and help her with this. Tad leaves for Egypt with Ra-Amina and the mummy. They go to Egypt in another box, as they don't have money. All of them finally reach the Nile. There, Tad tells Ra-Amina that he hasn't heard of her, and that's when she tells him it's because she only reigned for 3 days. Her jealous cousin put a scorpion under her bed, which caused her untimely death. Finally, they all reach the Nile, and Ra-Amina tells them that the map is in a cave behind the waterfall. Tad goes inside to search for it, and there he finds a chest and opens it. He's shocked to see a triangular-shaped prism. He asks if the prism is what they're looking for. Suddenly, he hears a voice from behind telling him to stop and hand himself over. Tad looks back to see the agents from before. Tad attempts to clear his name, blaming Mummy for everything. He even says harsh words to him, which causes Mummy to turn into Amit again. But this time, it has wings, which comes to their benefit. Tad and Ra Amina hang onto his tail while he flies through the sky. On the other hand, Sarah's team and Victoria also reach the place where the Emerald Tablet is supposed to be. There, they move a giant rock and look inside, but to their disappointment, there's nothing. They all think that this is a waste of time and start to walk away, but Victoria's book that has the fragment of the tablet starts glowing like never before, which causes her to think that this isn't right. Meanwhile, the fragment's energy starts to make the mummy dizzy, which causes them to crash in the middle of a desert. When they finally get up, the mummy starts walking in another direction, as he doesn't want to be a burden to anyone. Ra Amina also says that she doesn't think he can keep his end of the bargain. Tad somehow convinces them to help him, and that's when the prism starts glowing. There, they also see Tad's old team coming out of the cave, and Ra Amina tells him that's where he needs to use the prism. In order to get the tablet, they distract the team by disguising the mummy as a desert Bedouin. Ra Amina pretends to be a dead mummy while Tad sneaks into the cave. Sarah finds him there, and together they insert the prism into a big stone. The stone suddenly rises up, showing the map where the Emerald Tablet lies, which happens to be underneath the Great Pyramid. Tad runs out and tells this news to his team without thinking. They all go in and see for themselves, but just then, Victoria comes in and says that the Emerald Tablet is hers. She is now possessed by the piece of the tablet in her diary. Victoria traps them all in the cave and goes on her journey to find the Emerald Tablet on her motorcycle. Tad's team somehow manages to get all the rocks out of their way just to see the agents again. The agents finally arrest Tad, Mummy, Sarah, and her entire team. They take Mummy away, and Tad runs to save him but is hit on the head with a gun. Tad eventually wakes up in a moving vehicle. He asks about Mummy, and they tell him that his condition is getting worse. Sarah then tells him that they need to get out of there quickly in order to find the tablet. But Tad tells them to go without him because he's a danger to everyone around him. But just then, Mummy consoles Tad by saying that he's the best archaeologist and that he's the one who found Mummy. Tad is relieved and begs Mummy's forgiveness. Without any caution, Tad steals Mummy's rubber chicken, causing him to turn into the monster again. They throw the rubber chicken out of the vehicle, and Mummy breaks the vehicle to get it back. Despite this, Mummy starts to feel dizzy once again, and Ra Amina asks him to hang on, but he falls off the vehicle and lands on a jeep. Tad and Sarah ask Ra Amina to hop on with them, but she tells them that she wants to go to the Cairo Museum because that's her dream. Tad and Sarah understand and bid her farewell. They all separate and go on their own paths. Meanwhile, Victoria is already in the place where the Emerald Tablet is. Her book with the fragment drags her somewhere while it flies on its own and fits itself onto the seal of the tablet. Massive brick walls fly around, and the tablet eventually opens. Victoria is overjoyed and is about to go to the place when Sarah and Tad stop her. That's when she tells them that she can't take the tablet away from her. Victoria then runs inside the secret place, and Tad and Sarah also manage to catch up on time. They all end up in a huge, ruined place. Sarah asks Tad how they are going to find the tablet. In turn, Tad leads them to a place where the tablet is supposed to be, but, to his surprise, it's not there. Right then, a voice behind them asks them if they are looking for something. They turn around and see Victoria holding the tablet in her hands. She tells them that it was last used around 4,000 years ago, and now it's free once again. With the tablet in hand, she summons the beings from the underworld and casts a spell on the mummy that helps him complete his transformation. To their surprise, Mummy transforms into the monster and now follows Victoria's commands. He tries to kill them despite their pleas. Victoria is absolutely blinded by the tablet's power. All of the underworld's monsters emerge gradually. Tad and Sarah flee Mummy until Ra Amina comes to their aid. She shows Mummy the rubber chicken and gets herself stuck in the mess. Eventually, they push a pillar in front of Mummy, causing him to fall down, and his tail hits Victoria, who drops the tablet from her hands. The tablet falls off the cliff, and Belzoni flies down to bring it back up. Tad sees Belzoni carrying the tablet by its beak. He immediately takes the tablet and holds it in front of him as Mummy tries to attack him by jumping on him. Right then, the tablet causes him to fall off into the portal of the underworld. Tad is heartbroken to see this and screams out his name, knowing that Mummy is no longer with him. Days pass by, and Tad's discovery is now famous. It's his big day, and the entire world will witness his discovery. Tad's old team delivers a speech for him and welcomes him back to their team by giving him a trophy. With little hope in his heart, Tad asks where Mummy is, and the team sadly tells him that she fell into the abyss. Because of this, Tad keeps on repeating that this isn't right, and suddenly, his trophy starts disappearing out of his hands. It turns out that all of this is just his imagination, and the reality now is that he's still in the old, destroyed place with the mummy running towards him. Tad takes advantage of this opportunity and throws the tablet into the portal. The tablet suddenly breaks into pieces and falls into the portal. The portal to the underworld closes. Just then, the mummy fell to the ground and turned into his original form since the curse was now broken. Eventually, they run out of the place as it starts to break. Once safe, they all have a group hug. Surprisingly, the agents come and tell Tad that he's free to go and ask him to never say a word about the tablet. They finally travel back after the adventure and celebrate a happy ending.